ladies and gentlemen. Put your hands together. He's been here before. You love him, Maxie Jones.
So in May of 2010, I was in Harlem in my one-bedroom apartment, just chilling. And the phone rang. Hi, Maxie, this is Jessica. I'm just calling to let you know you're going to be a father. And I couldn't deny it. I wanted to say, get out of here. That's not possible. But I knew better than that. So I was just quiet. Then she said, I know, I messed up. But then I remembered that very moment when I had a choice. I had the choice to keep going or to stop. Matter of fact, we even had a moment when we talked about the fact that there was only a 20% chance of her getting pregnant. But you know, 20% is a lot. At that moment, it felt like a little bit. But I took the gamble. So I said to her, no, we messed up. So we just gotta do what we gotta do. Then I moved the phone away from my face and said, fuck. After we hung up the phone, I was thinking to myself, baby? I can't have no baby. I'm a confirmed bachelor. I got all these women. I'm 48 years old. I can't start having babies now. Then I started thinking about all the complications. She's not even my girlfriend. She lives in the Bronx. I live in Harlem. I ain't got no car. I gotta take the bus. I gotta pay child support. I ain't got no money. And at the time, there was this one woman that I was trying to settle down with. I was trying. And I even had to tell her now. I'm sorry. When Jessica was pregnant, I just dreaded every phone call I ever got from her. The phone would ring, I would look at it, and I would be like, ah! Hello? And she tried to include me as much as I wanted to be included. She was like, Maxie, I'm just calling to let you know, I made a doctor's appointment, and you're welcome to come if you'd like. And the truth is, I didn't want to go. I didn't want to know nothing. You know what I wanted to say? I wanted to say, why don't you just call me when the baby is born? But even I knew that I needed to show some kind of care and compassion for the woman who was having my baby. So I said, okay, I'll be there. We went to the hospital, we went for the first sonogram, and she told the nurse, she said, listen, I don't want to know what I'm having. Don't tell me, I want to be surprised. But I didn't want to be surprised. I wanted to know. So it was that day that I found out that we were having a son. You see, when I was a kid, I was the only boy and the youngest of 5. And the reason there were 5 was because my father wanted a son. He wanted a Maxie Jones Jr. And my mother would have just kept going until she got her son. But the thing is, my parents separated before I was even old enough to remember them being together. So I grew up in the household with my mother, my 4 sisters, and then just me. So I didn't really have anybody to play with, nothing like that. As a matter of fact, one of my sisters, Zita, she would be playing with Barbie dolls, and she would be like, Maxie, come here. Here, you be Ken. We didn't see much of my father because my parents didn't get along, so he was really just like a visitor to us. But then my mother passed away when I was 15 years old. And that's when my father came back around. By that time, I was 6 feet tall. I was growing up in the Bronx, New York, during the birth of hip-hop. I was living in the projects. He didn't know what to do with me. So one day he just said to me, he was like, what you doing, man? I said, nothing. He was like, you want to go for a ride? Sure. All right, come on, let's go. And we went for a ride. We were riding in the car for a long time, not even talking, because we didn't know each other. We didn't know what to say. We would make small talk. So, Dad, how's Aunt Grace doing? Oh, she's fine. Matter of fact, she asked about you. Oh, yeah? I'll tell her I said hi. Then we get quiet again. One day I asked him, so, Dad, can you teach me how to drive? No, you're too young to learn how to drive. Plus, you don't have a permit. Do you got a permit? No. Well, when you get your permit, I'll teach you how to drive. Then we got quiet again. Then one day we were riding around, and my father pulled over to the grocery store, and he said, listen, I'm going to be back. I'm going to go get myself a beer. You want soda? And I said, well, you know, Dad, when I'm with my friends, I drink beer. He said, really? I said, yeah. He said, all right, wait right here. My father went in the store and came back out with a 6-pack of Budweiser. He didn't say anything. He just got into the car, drove to the park, pulled over, and said, here, let's drink. And my father and I sat there and drank that whole 6-pack of Budweiser. By the time we were finished, we were talking about women, my future, how I was doing in school. And after the last beer, he said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to teach you how to drive. I said, but Dad, I ain't got no permit. He's like, so what? We'll worry about that later. So I got my first driving lesson after drinking 3 Buds. But all that mattered was that I had my father and that he had his son. One day, Jessica went into the hospital to get a checkup, and the doctors found that our son wasn't growing the way he was supposed to. So they checked her into the hospital. This was several weeks before the baby was due. And I went to the hospital to visit her every single day. Not because I was all happy to be a father, but because even that early on, I wanted to do every single thing I could to stay out of court. I'm telling you. Everything I did was to stay out of court. I didn't want her to say, no, he didn't even come visit me in the hospital. I had a cousin who worked for Child Protective Services. She was like, Maxie, make sure you keep every single receipt for everything you buy. I was like, I got them right here. One of my other friends was like, listen, man, do everything you need to do, but that's all, because they're just going to be expecting more. So I was like, all right. When my son Malcolm was born, I was right there in the hospital. He was premature, so they had to keep him for another 6 weeks. When it was time for them to release Jessica about 4 days later, the doctor asked her, said, so where do you live? She's like, oh, I live up in the Bronx. She's like, no, 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 no. What floor do you live on? She said, 5th floor. He said, do you have an elevator? She said, no. You see, Jessica had a C-section. So the doctor was like, you can't go home to your place until that scar heals. The doctor looked at me and said, where do you live? I want to say, none of your damn business where I live. But I told him I live in Harlem. He said, what floor? I said, I live on the 1st floor. So the doctor said, so why don't you go home with him? And she just looked up at me and said, well, I guess I'm going to be staying at your place until I heal. And in my mind, I was like, my place? I ain't got no living with nobody kind of place. I live in the bachelor pad. And what she mean until she heals? How long is that? But I said, okay. So I brought Jessica home with me, and on the way home, I asked her, I was like, so how long do you think it's going to take for that to heal? She's like, I don't know why. You in a hurry? No. But every once in a while, I was like, so how's that scar coming along? While Jessica was staying with me during that time, see, I still had a landline, a home phone, and other women were calling. So when the phone rang, I rushed and get it. Hey, hello? I gotta call you back. And see, where I lived in Harlem, there was a supermarket right next door. So I'm like, Jessica, you need something from the store? No? Okay, we need some eggs. I'm gonna go get some eggs. And I'll go next door to the store and talk on the phone. I would buy one item at a time. They're like, yeah, baby, we gonna hook up, don't worry. Once that scar heals. See, before Jessica moved into my crib, I had a bachelor pad. Let me tell y'all what I used to do. Anytime I left my apartment, I left with the notion that I was gonna get lucky and I'd be coming back with somebody else. So anytime I left my apartment, I left a specific light on in case we come back at night. And I always left some jazz music playing low. And I burned some incense before I left so the fragrance would still be there when we got back. So when I opened the door, the ambiance would just hit her. See, I wanted women to walk in my apartment and just take their drawers off. But now Jessica's here, and I don't even recognize my crib. There's a breast pump on my coffee table, baby stuff everywhere. I don't know when is this thing gonna heal? And then one day, Jessica and I were sitting down watching TV, and just out of nowhere, she says to me, you know, I know you want your apartment back. So I'm gonna go to the doctor and see if I can be released to go back to my place. And it was like the heavens opened up, like, ah. I was like, really? She said, yeah. So I wanted to make sure, so I said, now listen, when the baby comes home, you sure you're gonna be okay carrying him up and down the stairs? She said, well, I ain't got no choice. But then she said, but then I might have a stroller and groceries or some other stuff. I don't know how I'm gonna do that, but I guess I just gotta do it. Then for a moment, I sat there and I was thinking, and I was picturing her lugging my son and other stuff up and down the stairs. And I really felt like, as a father, I'm not supposed to let that happen. But then on the other side, I'm picturing her in my apartment and the end of my bachelor life. But then I thought about my son. And I said to myself, you know, Maxie, this is your opportunity to give your son what you didn't have for the first 16 years of your life. So I turned to Jessica and I said, so, I'll tell you what, why don't you just pack your stuff and y'all stay here with me? And she looked at me like I had two heads. She was like, really? I was like, I thought that was my opportunity. I was like, yeah, really. So I went, I moved Jessica in to my place. And as soon as I moved in, I went next door to the supermarket and I called the woman that I was trying to settle down with. And I told her, I said, listen, this ain't gonna work out. And I realized at that moment that prior to that moment, fatherhood had chosen me. And it was only then that I had chosen fatherhood. And I thought about my father, and I thought about that day when he said to me, come on, let's go. And we didn't know each other at that time. We were strangers. And we drank a lot of beer, we gambled, we even chased women together. That's how we started out. But then we evolved into doing other things like real father and son. And I remember when I bought my first car, And I asked my father to come with me, and I wanted to use his advice. And I said, so Dad, tell me, what's the practical car I should buy? And he said, listen, unless you live on a farm and need a pickup truck, unless you have a family and need a minivan, you can get whatever you want. He said, but just understand, when the time comes, make sure you get what you need. And I never forgot that. Now here's me and Jessica living together in my apartment, and we had never really identified, because we didn't have a real relationship before that. We had never really identified our relationship. I just moved her in. So one day we were sitting around, and she asked me, she says, so what is this we're doing? I said, I don't know. I was just trying to be a father. She said, so are we co-parenting? Yeah, that's it. Co-parenting. So that's what we did. But of course, since we were together, we tried to have more of a real relationship, but then we realized that we just got on each other's nerves more that way. So we just went back to co-parenting. But then one morning, she woke me up. She said, Maxie, wake up, it's 6 o'clock. And I got up and I was like, okay, thank you. She said, oh, by the way, I'm pregnant again. We didn't plan to have our second son, Matthew, but it's not like we were trying not to have him either. Now, just about every night before my sons go to bed, they say, Daddy, could you please read us a story? And most of the time I do it. And I believe it's because of that both my sons love to read. You see, my father wasn't much of a talker, and he never lectured me. But he taught me everything I needed to know that day when he said to me, come on, let's go. And so often I want to say to him, thanks, Dad. Thank you so much for making that choice. Because in 2007, when we laid my father to rest, he and I were the best of friends. And those first 16 years didn't really matter. The other day, my son, Malcolm, was following me around my house. Everywhere I went, he followed me. I went in the kitchen, he followed me. I went in the basement, he followed me. And it was getting frustrated to me, and I was like, Malcolm, why are you following me around the house? He said, I don't know, Daddy. I just like being around you. And then I thought about my father, and I smiled. I said, okay, come on, let's go. Thank you very much.
Maxie Jones, let's go.